Hey y'all, I'm Mike, the RV inspector and technician,
And I'm Elizabeth. I run our business.
and welcome to the Cozy Camper Podcast. My note needs to slow down so that I can
There you go.
that I can remember. What's up, Heath? Welcome, man.
What's up, Mike? Thanks for having me.
So, where in the world are you right now?
Yeah, before we ever committed to doing this new startup, I also made a commitment to my wife, which was she's always wanted to live abroad for a year. We did the RV thing for 5 years in the States, took our kids on a bunch of trips, and but she'd always wanted to just try life abroad for a year. So we committed to this school program called Boundless Life. Our kids are 3 and 5. I know you've got little ones as well. And so basically, it's a full year of schooling Montessori style in different countries. So I'm working U.S. hours, but we're in Italy right now.
And I think you were in London, and then you were somewhere before that,
El-
right?
Elkhart for a week, but
Yeah.
then yeah, Montenegro, and then so we all our families back in the States. So we were back in for a month, so we kind of go back and forth. But this was the commitment for a year. And honestly, like I don't know, we're gonna take the conversation and answer a lot of questions, but like talking high level, like one of the things that was important for me, and I'm sure you have a lot of this too, as someone who's in an RV, like we spent several years working really hard to create a business that allowed us to travel the country in an RV and have this freedom so that we could do whatever we wanted with our time. Kind of started with the job and then went to client work, and then we, started doing all these other things. And I remember when I was building my last software business, Campground Booking, we bootstrapped for 4 years and it was tough. And I just remember at one point I told my wife, I feel like this lifestyle that we've worked so hard to create is now in conflict with this business that I'm trying to build. And it feels like the more that I enjoy and do this, it feels in direct competition with this. And that was an interesting thing to wrestle with because basically we got lucky because we got pregnant. And so I had this excuse to go settle, like be in one place and just put my face into work, and it was effective. But I also remember thinking, like looking at my wife and remember thinking like, I don't want to put ourselves in that situation again where, I get to do what I want, but I put my family in a place to not thrive. So for me, there's no point in winning at business, but losing, like not having a wife, a good relationship or whatever. I know getting deep to start, but that was kind of some
No,
more of the backstory for why we're here.
and the reason I ask is we had the Traveling Titans. They're on Instagram, and they did, I think, the shorter, like 3-month cohort of what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I've wanted to do it ever since. But what you just described, where you're in a space with business and you're trying to sort it out, we are not yet in a place where I can not work personally in the field for a period of time. But we can sort of see the end, right? So we can see that, that end zone in the distance. And honestly, a lot of full-time RVers criticize us because we only move twice a year. We're going back from Texas to Illinois, and
What's the
we're having the
criticism
conversation.
that
Yeah,
you don't
and
move?
it's yeah. Well, you're a full-time RVer. You should move much, or you should move more.
Mhm.
And we're like, well, our business is here in Texas, and so we're trying. Like, we're doing really well right now in Texas, and we're taking a risk by going to Illinois. Like, we did well last year in Illinois and Wisconsin, and to a lesser extent Indiana, but we're doing very well here. So in order to do this thing we want to do, we're taking an enormous risk by picking up and moving to a state where we're not as well established. But it's what we want to do. We were talking about this the other day. I was like, well, do we actually need to move to Illinois right now? Should we stay in Texas because we're doing here now? And then the conversation is, we sold the house, we bought an RV, we're here. Is this really what we want to do? So they're almost in conflict. So trying to tease that out is difficult, and it feels a lot of times like the timing isn't right, or it's never perfect. But if there's one thing I've learned, is that you can't wait for things to be perfect. You just have to make the best decision with the information you have right now. And Elizabeth correctly assessed, if we go to Illinois and it doesn't work, we can just come back to Texas. There's really nothing lost except some time in the attempt.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people want to wait for everything to be perfect and to line stuff up, and it never It never will be, no matter what you do. Like I'm sure, looking back at your own businesses, you I could have done this better. We could have waited longer for that. I wish I would have been more aggressive to do this. It's never perfect.
I mean, we're experiencing that all across the board right now with RV help in many ways, which is you make the best decision you can with the best information. But also there's a thought process of like you also need to move forward because you can also sit around forever not making any progress, just, indecision paralysis. So it's better to make a decision. If it doesn't work, you change. Yeah.
Well, and we've seen RV help go through in its short time several iterations of algorithm and all these different things, and I know it's going to continue. And like some of it's not going to work.
Sure.
Others might be. Sometimes there's going to be unintended consequences, especially when you start to work at scale. So if RV help can, if individual practitioners, RV technicians and inspectors can start to take a bite out of legacy RV repair dealerships, eventually the industry is going to look back and say what's going on over there. And even in our own space, when we make reels and we get 200,000, 500,000 views on something about an RV or a specific manufacturer, when you scream into the void long enough, eventually the void's going to scream back. And so you can have all these unintended consequences. So to unpack that, I guess what I'm wondering is you're building this, what has it been like to kind of, what have you put out into the world? What have you gotten back? Have you heard anything from the industry?
I mean, so there's been different buckets, and I'm curious to hear what Void has been yelling back at you, but we can settle that. Yeah, so we launched in Tampa, and I know you've covered some of this with Dennis, so I don't want to be too redundant, but we went live in Tampa, and that was good because it was the RV industry I've recognized through different projects over the years. It's obviously cyclical that it goes up in the summer for everyone, and then changes and everything, but a lot of things get rolled out at shows for better or worse. There's these arbitrary deadlines that seem to work pretty well for the industry that says we're going to launch this product in Tampa, we're going to do this one at open house or Hershey or whatever. And so that was very intentional for us to roll out at Tampa, but it was nice because there were so many manufacturers there. And when we first started having conversations about working on RV help, one of the very first things I kind of did was I reached out to just friends in the space, like, and one of them that I've known for a long time was Ashish, who runs M&A over at Winnebago. And so he was in charge of buying Grand Design, Chris Craft, and several other businesses. And I just had conversations with Ashish and I just said, hey, thinking about working on this product. I feel like there's a lot of needs here, but the one thing about service is it touches so many different people. There's parts, so you got the suppliers, you got the manufacturers, you've got aftermarket warranty providers, you've got mobile techs, you've got dealers. So there's, depending on who you talk to on any given day, everyone kind of has their own perspective. And so I tried to talk to a lot of these different stakeholders, as we were getting started. And one of the ones I didn't expect as soon as we launched was actually um, big marketplaces for RV rentals. So a couple of those players have reached out to have conversations just because you can imagine there's so many break points in the like as people are renting RVs. And so that was an interesting one. There's not really a very easy quick tie-in right now for us, but I think there definitely could be as we go. But I mean, the feedback has been, depending on who you're talking to, like fairly positive, especially from an RVer perspective, which is ultimately at the end of the day, like what we're building this truly to help. Like when something breaks, how can you find people to fix it? How can you find people to take a look at it so you can minimize the things breaking, an inspection? And so like I was at Escapade with Debbie and Scott. They were in our RV help booth a couple weeks ago. And that was really encouraging because I see that as our avatar. Like you always think about who's your avatar in your business, who are you really trying to go after and think about. And for me, it's really the full-time RVer, the person who doesn't know who the service providers are in their market. So they've traveled away from their home market, they're moving around the country. They may have their guy or girl they go to when they go to Florida in the winter or Texas in the winter. But as they're traveling in the Tetons or somewhere else, like they don't know who's available. And so the excitement that we had with that crowd of full timers was huge. They're like, I can't believe this exists. I had one woman who showed me her contact list that she had created on her phone of all the providers all around the country. But realistically, now that have seen something like that, I'm like, oh, well, we rolled out favoriting on RV Help now, so you can favorite providers that you've enjoyed working with. And so to me, that was really cool to be able to hear the excitement and feedback from RV owners, and also just to put a stamp where I feel there's been a lack of like trust as well, like from an RV owner perspective. Like we did a deep dive last summer. We interviewed like over 400 RVers, said, hey, within service, what's your biggest pain point? Within mobile, like when you've hired a mobile tech, or if you've hired a mobile tech, what's been the biggest pain point? And so um, we've had a lot of different conversations. I could keep going on and on, but I'll take a pause so I don't keep monologuing.
Well, I think you brought up a good point in that if you have sort of I identified while you were talking three different categories of person you could talk to. Right? It's like RV industry types, RV owners, and small independent practitioners, right? So if you ask every single person that we've said, hey, RV help, check it out. Every RV owner, they love it. They're totally into it. Just like with mobile repairs and inspections. There's really not a counter argument to a private RV inspection from the consumer standpoint. But then if you talk to a dealership, they have a very different perspective on both of those things. So inspectors they don't like because they slow down deals and they see them as meddlesome sometimes. And mobile techs, well, maybe that dealership has their own mobile technician service and they see you as competition, or maybe they see you as drawing business away from their dealership. Not everybody. If you ask 10 different dealers, I'm sure you get 10 different answers, but those are the kind of perspectives that are competing. And so when you ask like what kind of reaction do I get from the void, the public, like I sent you a link over the weekend, like, hey, I've got this video, it's got 200,000 views, overwhelming support.
Mhm.
The public loves it. Every time that I have had a conversation with an OEM or a dealership chain, it's hey, you're radioactive. We don't,
Mm.
you know, we don't. It's not Mike and Cozy Camper specifically. It's we don't like RV inspections. You go over there. I won't say who they are. There are a couple of manufacturers that seem to be more friendly to it because from a manufacturing standpoint, it doesn't really matter as much. It's more of a pain point at the dealer level than it is at the manufacturer. Because if it's new and we're doing an inspection, they just fix it. Whether I find it or the dealer finds it,
Right.
it doesn't matter. But it's different for the dealership that has to actually deal with the drama of me coming there and setting it up and finding these things that are wrong. And now they got to put a new floor and a brand new fifth wheel because the flooring is ripped and they didn't see it and it looks bad for them. Whereas that manufacturer that built it, they're like, well, all right, whatever. We'll authorize the 8 hours to fix it.
Yeah.
In their aggregate, it doesn't matter, but it does here. And that's the tough part is that sometimes my perception is that the parts of the RV industry are almost at odds with parts of the RV consumer. And
Absolutely.
it's like how do you and I'm not saying like I'm certain that you mentioned Winnebago. I'm certain that Winnebago wants to do right by their customers, but the perception is that that's not the case. And so,
I think individually, if you were to drive, I think just like if you are, I'm going to slow down so I don't use your word that you've put up on the thing. But if you go talk to a lot of individuals at the RV companies up in Elkhart, I think you would recognize that for the most part, they're all really good people. Like almost every person we've met who's actually running product or working, within the manufacturers. And of course, there's tons of people, so there's always going to be bad eggs here and there. But almost for the most part, there's no one out there that I know of or have met that's making RVs. It's like, I hope this RV sucks. That's not a thing. Like most of them are actually trying to figure out like what's useful, what's helpful, and they're genuinely just people trying. Um, but I will say that even in our, 3 months that we've been in existence at RV Help, I've been um, pretty much yelled at out. I was on a call with a bunch of dealers and just told them like what we were working on, and there's a theory of abundance you can have, which is like there's enough to go around for everybody, and there's a theory of scarcity, which is like I need to take what's mine. Um, but the reality is a lot of service shops like haven't lived up to expectations from manufacturers. Um, the rec time, the amount of time it takes for somebody to report an issue is wrong in their RV to actually get it fixed is incredibly too long. So the reality is like the industry needs mobile technicians. They people need to be able to reach out and have somebody come fix something at their campsite. Not everybody has a truck to haul it in. Like we were full time for 5 years. Like the amount of times we had to go drop off our RV to, take it in the shop and go get it fixed and then have to call and no one's looked at it. Like it's it's not an ideal process. And so I do feel there is friction there that is at odds with the actual RV owner. And like even just this week, we're putting Dennis on the road in an old Cruise America RV. I just bought like the cheapest one I could find on RV Trade, and we're gonna slap RV Help on there. And there was a show going on in Tennessee, the National Indoor RV Centers, which actually they have a great reputation from everything I've seen. They seem really good. But we asked if we could be a vendor, and they said no, because there's going to be dealers there, and they feel like we're going to be competing against them. And so I'm like, okay, well, cool, we'll go to the next one. You know what I mean? But
That and that's the thing, and we've talked at length about my prior career, my experience. The thing I hate most in life is the phrase, "This is the way we've always done it." And I feel like in the RV industry, there's a lot of that. Hey, this is the way we've always done it. It's always been acceptable to drop your RV off at the dealer, wait 6 months to get it back. The consumer, they don't, they don't, they don't want that. And something I learned sort of early in my RV inspection career, I used to be a lot more hostile in my presentation, and I was throwing grenades at the RV industry, and just every day, right? My first like probably million views was just me throwing grenades at the RV industry. And I finally had somebody reach out and tell me, hey, you need to stop. It's what you said, that most people are good, but there are tons of competing financial interests that create perceptions. And there are some bad actors in any industry, right? But uh, we had to sort of change what we were doing. And I was like, well, maybe if I can convince the consumer that this is a positive thing, the ripple effect will be, if I present a professional image, the ripple effect will be that I will gain some traction with the industry. I think the first part is coming along very well. The consumer seems to react, like we said, to RV inspections and then the promise of RV help super well. The RV industry is, it's a huge ship with a tiny rudder, and the captain of that ship doesn't want to turn the rudder. So, guys like you are sitting there trying to turn that wheel to change the ship, but it's not going to happen overnight. But I guarantee that if you polled every single RV owner, everyone that touches RV industry, everyone would agree that the current status of RV service is not acceptable. It's just nobody is satisfied with the way RV service is. Probably no one is overall satisfied with the state of RV manufacturing or sales or any of this stuff. So your business is literally called RV Help, which is pretty on the nose for
mhm.
what it is that you're trying to do. The third shadowy group that we kind of touched on was the other practitioners like me, RV inspectors and technicians. What has what has threading that needle been like for y'all since you got started?
Well, you're in the Facebook groups.
I am.
Um, I mean, threading the needle, how? Just like how's it gone?
Yeah, what's the reaction been like? Well, I know what the reaction has been like, but I presume the listener doesn't. But what's the reaction been like for you, and how do y'all handle it?
Uh, I mean, at first we were we went up to Tampa. We hosted a meetup the week before we launched, and the intent with that was we had 40 inspectors and techs. They were formerly part of my RV Resource Meetup, which we also acquired leading up to the launch. And but part of the idea was just go spend time with people in person, have conversations, because we were trying, at the time it was three of us. We were trying to communicate to hundreds and hundreds of people. Um, and I think when the biggest concern right out of the gate was who are you and what's kind of the intention with this, like waiting on the other shoe to drop. Um, and so a lot of the initial reaction from And it was also different between among service providers. A lot of technicians I spoke with, like when we went to the meetup in Athens for the annual expo, we're just excited that we were going to be putting more energy into a platform to promote mobile RV techs, because a lot of them felt like the energy hadn't got put into the previous locator platform. And so that was, I think, different. And it was a very different reaction from a lot of the inspectors too, which was more trepidation around changing up what was, or what was perceived to be working for some people, or many people. I don't want to speak for anyone, but yeah. So I think the initial reaction was a bit of, who are you, what's going on here? And then I think over time it's been trying to establish a line of communication. Not to say that we're going to get everything right every step of the way, but we will be responsive, and talk to people, jump on as many phone calls, Zoom calls. Like, we're hosting another office hours this month, to address some of the things we talked about last month, with the group. A lot of it around inspector search and things like that, to make sure that we're trying to be supportive on the platform, and basically make sure we're prioritizing, good providers, but that also there's an element of work getting distributed out, so we could have a whole conversation if we wanted to about search and things like that, because that's been a big topic of conversation. As we've seen people getting jobs from the platform, that's been the best part for me, when someone's reached out and said, hey, I got work, or I hadn't got jobs previously, or I've gotten more work than I had before. You told me, you're like, I've gotten 3 times more work in this February or March than I did last year, and you've been able to attribute quite a bit of those jobs from RV Help. So for me, at the end of the day, the goal is aligned with service providers, which is ultimately, we'll be successful if we're driving business to serve RV service pros. And so for me, that's always been a big key point, that especially in those early conversations, where you're just trying to build trust and figure out, like, who are you and what do you want here? Like, what are you trying to? And so for me, that's been something I've tried to really reiterate, which is that ultimately our goal is going to be to try to drive as much work into this platform as possible, so that we're helping our viewers get their rigs taken care of, and that also we're hopefully driving a lot of business and creating tools that hopefully can be useful as well for service pros.
And uh, you, I agree with my perception at the beginning. I was frustrated at the very beginning because I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
And as you noted the other day when we were talking, like, I'm running this. I have this social media platform. I'm doing hundreds of thousands of views. I'm sending people to nrvia.org to find an inspector, and then all of a sudden, here comes this RV help guy, and he's telling me, like, to change things. I had no idea what was going on. It was totally frustrating. You took the time to talk to me, like, get my perspective and understand what's going on, and I'm so grateful for that. But I'm one of 500 inspectors that I'm sure you had to touch base with, and that's tough. And then I watched, kind of, we had conversations, and you are not an inspector. None of the leadership at RV Help is, and part of, I think, an issue is that RV technician stuff is very well defined. There's hours, there's a book, there's parts you can buy online, there's like 4 distributors. It's very well defined. RV inspections are a different animal, where it is not well defined really at all. It's different regionally. It's very different based on who taught the class when the individual practitioner went through, and unpacking a lot of that has been such. I've seen it be a challenge for y'all, and for the listener, you know, uh, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but it was my suggestion to say, hey, there is a difference in tenure and training and reviews for an inspector that should matter to the consumer.
Hmm.
And I hated the old NRVIA locator because there was no way to stand out. There was no way to broadcast that I had additional training or that I had been doing this for a while. I hated every minute of it. And I used to, because I'm an extremely competitive person. I used to hate when, like, some competitor locally would then get in the NRVIA group and be like, "Oh, I've got a lead this week," and I'd be like, "How did they get it?" Right? Like, how did they get it and I didn't? And all of that to say that that was just like a phone book, right? That was the yellow pages. We're gonna find this. There was no way to do it. What I like about RV Help is that you can see all the additional training and qualifications. You can see the professional reputation. You can see just the difference in presentation. Is someone's profile a picture of them from their military service or their, daughter's wedding, and they've cropped their face out and put it up, or have they taken the time to have a professional headshot done, right? You can see all of those differences, and it helps the consumer make a good decision based on that. And I believe, having talked to Dennis, that y'all are going to find a way to break that out even more and help the consumer make better choices, which right now might be tough because I know a lot of practitioners are having to change the way they operated, where maybe before they were completely reliant on a locator and it didn't matter that they didn't have reviews or additional training. And now suddenly their job is very competitive because now they're ranked number 5 in a zone where they used to be number 1 because they've been doing it for longer. And that's tough. But it sounds like what you're saying is, well, if we can just drive, 10x or 100x more business to the locator, well, number 1 is going to fill up, number 2 is going to fill up, or maybe number 1 and 2 are booking out, so now number 3 gets an opportunity to increase how much they're doing, and then number 3 can harvest reviews, and maybe they become number 2. Maybe number 1 wants to start hiring inspectors to work for them, that's our roadmap. That's our next step, is we'll start to hire inspectors to work for us because we're a little bit more busy. And I think that's a good thing, but I don't discount that it's difficult right now for a lot of people. And I guess I'm wondering, what's it like for you, Heath, when somebody calls you and like, hey, we've got this rosy future. What's it like for you when you hear something like that? When somebody says, oh my God, this change has been so brutal for me.
I mean, it's been the topic of most of our conversations. And you were on the office hours that we had a month ago. It's tough because it, and there's not a woe to me scenario at all. It's just it's a puzzle that we are committed to working on solving. I mean, like you said, for anyone listening who is not familiar with the old platform, basically a lot of it was derived off of your certification level. So if there's only a couple of master certified people for inspections, um, and but then basically it was based off of distance, and seniority. I think was a component there too. And so effectively, you could have had a top ranking position in a top market. Um, Based off the fact of when you graduated from the school. And so effectively, like when we've went to a different ranking component, it's been very disruptive, for some of those individuals. And that has been, so Josiah, on our Zoom office hours this week, we have some ideas for how we can address that. I was talking to a friend of mine, Ryan, who's the co-founder at Outdoorsy. And one thing a lot of marketplaces do is they have weight they have a weightiness to their search rankings, meaning like reviews matter, responsiveness matters. Are you actually answering when somebody reaches? So you have your core criteria of what matters. Like you're doing that very well. You're soliciting reviews, that type of thing. But then there's also a randomization component within, like, so if you have great reviews, you're still going to rise to the top. But within those tiers, like there's a little bit of randomization so that effectively, like, you get some of the work distributed to other providers in a marketplace. And what it does is it creates a healthy ecosystem versus like one person dominating like a whole dominion. You're saying like, hey, if you're still crushing it, you're going to keep showing up more consistently near the top of the rankings. But you want to be able to support new people coming online too. And so you want to do that in a way that's like, hey, these are the criteria you need to be following. But so what we're trying to look at is like what has worked really well for other marketplace type companies, like whether it's an Airbnb or like an Outdoorsy, which is in our space. And that's been kind of the feedback that we've gotten. It's like have the core criteria, but then have some type of ranking component that's um, you know going to allow people to rise to the top and stuff like that. But the other side, that's more of a short term solution for like distributing what's coming in. But then the other side of it is actually trying to grow the whole addressable market, which is what you've expressed as one of your missions as well, which is how can we like right now, do you know what the number of inspections are, like for how many RVs are getting bought or sold every year? It's actually, I think it's pretty low.
We it Yeah, I would be surprised if it's even 2% of the total number of. I mean, if you just assume, I don't even know how many inspectors are. I know how many certified inspectors there are, but I don't know how many active inspectors there are, because a lot of people don't become active, or they were active and they shut down. But when you look at numbers where it's saying we're doing 400,000 say deliveries a year, that's just of new RVs.
Hmm.
I don't know how many used RVs are getting sold. Well, even if every single active RV inspector were booked 80% of the time, it would still be, a slim fraction of the total numbers. So my vision has always been to, well, if we can just get to 10%, if we can touch 10% of every RV sale that exists, all the inspectors will be so busy that it won't matter. It won't matter if you're ranked number 5 or number 10 on RV Help. We'll all be slammed in the same way that every home inspection, virtually every home sale has an inspection.
Hmm.
Everybody buys homes. There's tons of there were 3 or 4 different home inspectors that lived in my neighborhood when I still had a house, and they're busy all the time. And so if we can just greatly increase awareness of the service and acceptance by the industry, being right now being ranked number 4 on RV Help is difficult, but kind of I don't envision that it will be a problem 5 years from now. Between enhanced metrics and then greater awareness of what's going on, I think this problem will evaporate. But it's tough now.
Yeah, and
I think it will go away though.
part of the other thought process here a little bit is creating tools. Like this is something you and I have been talking about. And so my background, Dennis, Josiah, we all built software for small businesses. So mine was Campground, so reservation system, helped you integrate with your QuickBooks, manage your calendar, your schedule for campsites and stuff. And so one of the realizations has been in a lot of these conversations is if we're talking to a service provider and they don't have a website and they don't have, there's not a real software that's helping them run their business. A lot of inspectors are using Home Gauge, but it seems like there's an opportunity to create some tools that are helpful, so that you're not, even though ideally we'd love everyone to use RV Help and all of that. At the end of the day, if you don't stay in business, then it's not good for us. It's not good for you. So I think our long term aim is also going to be developing and creating tools for technicians and also inspectors so that we're helping them be successful on their own outside of us too. Because at the end of the day, it's like two primary goals for us: make it easier to own an RV and operate it so you don't have to put it in a shop and not go travel, and also support our service providers on the platform. So if we can create tools that are helpful for doing that, then that's a win.
Well, I'm so glad. So I'm going to ask you this question because I promised someone that I would.
Yeah,
Do you personally recommend that any business owner be completely reliant on one lead source?
never. No.
No, and I couldn't imagine that you would, but I promised I would ask that question. And it's like, hey, well, no, like RV Help is great. We do get leads from it. I think it's going to get better, but we also right now the majority comes through our website or social media, and that's a healthy distribution. And I was having this conversation with a group of inspectors a few weeks ago. Heath is in London, and Dennis and Josiah go to visit Heath, and their plane gets hijacked by terrorists, and now they're like they're fighting on the plane. There is no more RV Help. So what happens then, right? Does your business evaporate overnight, or are you able to continue on in the event of some disaster that we have no control over? And that's how I think. If I got banned from Facebook tomorrow, which is our primary social media lead source, it would be very difficult for us. It definitely be devastating, but we would continue. We could survive without that lead source, and that's something we have a training program coming up for specifically inspectors, and one of the things that we're doing is teaching them the business development side of things. Like, you can have a website that gets you leads. You can go to events that get you leads. You do need to work on your sales presentation. That's a big part of it that people sort of overlook. The consumer generally doesn't know what's involved in an RV inspection. So part of your job is to teach them what an RV inspection is and justify the cost of the thing. And if you're not good at that, you're not going to be successful regardless of what. If RV Help is delivering you 200 leads a month and you don't know how to talk on the phone, you're not going to get 200 inspections. It's not going to happen. And that's part of it too. That's what we're screaming on the mountaintops right now is like, hey, let's let Heath and the guys sort out RV Help and give them our input and work it out. But simultaneously, we need to be fixing our own individual businesses so that we can thrive. And then, like, if RV Help takes off and is amazing, sweet, we all win. But until then, you have to learn to be self-sufficient. And that's right now really hard for brand new inspector because they have to build a website from scratch. That website's going to have no
Mhm.
web, domain authority. They're going to have no Google reviews, and those first 5 inspections are tough. So when you talk about randomization, bringing somebody up that maybe wouldn't otherwise be there, sweet. To me, as somebody that's maybe a bigger practitioner, does a lot of work, I probably won't even feel that. But somebody that's brand new will definitely feel that. That person who's still working, this is a side hustle, they're just trying to get started, they're retiring next year. I think that'll be huge. Uh, but the top 4 or 5 people in a market are still going to be the top 4 or 5 in the market, even if you start to shuffle in the next 10. So I think it's great. I think that's a great idea for y'all to work on. What do you think? Have you had conversations about what that would look like?
Yeah, we have it on a test server. We're going to share it on the office hours this week.
That was a way more developed answer than I expected
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to provide
You
just
actually
then.
might have an email because we send it out. So like one thing people have asked as well is like, how are you getting feedback or talking with providers? And so basically we have a list. So everything in our if you're a service provider on our vHelp and you use the little chat icon in the dashboard, it goes to a system called Intercom. So we track and respond to all those messages. We hired an awesome girl named Elizabeth. She responds, and then we talk about everything that comes in there. But like you mentioned earlier, it's like, oh, we've made some mistakes. So like one of the things we did was like we pushed a big update to inspector search at the beginning that was the same as tech search, and everyone was like, whoa, 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 like these are different, and like we needed to dig in. So we created a process that said, okay, we're not just going to push up changes. We're going to take everybody who's reached out to us and given us feedback. We're going to send it out to them, on a test link and say, hey, we're working on some changes. What do you think? And at the end of the day, like we have to take that with a grain of salt. Even if I talk to you, you're great. We talk all the time, Mike. Like I love and appreciate your feedback, but I also want to take it through a lens of your perspective. And we're representing hundreds, and then we're going to be representing thousands of service providers. And so, I need to take that each data point and put it together. But we started creating feedback mechanisms so that we're not service providers, but the reason we have a Facebook group with 600 of us in there is like we have a direct line and we have communication with everyone often. And so that's been a really important component. Is like it would have been easier had we not made the Facebook group, but we wanted that feedback. We wanted to like whether good or bad. To me, it's growth, and that's what's really important.
Yeah, agreed. And if there's one thing I've learned in this business is I fully understand what it's like in Central Texas to be an RV inspector, to a lesser extent in the Midwest. I have no idea what it's like to be an RV inspector in Florida. So 100 miles in Texas, sweet. That's a great range. In Florida, maybe not, because that's from coast to coast, right?
Mm,
And you got to drive through swamps. In Nebraska, that you might have a 300-mile service radius, and you're willing to drive much further. So yeah, I can share perspective, but it's not going to be the same for everybody.
yeah.
And you try to zoom out, and see different perspectives. I told you earlier in this conversation that I hated the old locator. Well, people that were married couples on the old locator got 6 pins.
Hmm.
So they got to be first everywhere they wanted to be first because they could just drop more pins. And I hated every minute of that. Right. But I can understand why they would be upset that they can't do it anymore because it affects their business model, but also that probably wasn't what's best for the consumer because it's just one team, and maybe even like one half of that team doesn't even inspect. They just both went through the class, and now they both get 17 locators on a map and can dominate a city. So totally get it. And mistakes are gonna get made. I told you about our biggest one where we were throwing hand grenades. That's okay. It's not reasonable to expect RV help to be perfect today, and it's not reasonable to expect y'all to never ever change. So kind of what I'm trying to get at is like I want to give y'all space to sort this stuff out, and I'm grateful to give
Hey, Mike,
feedback. But
I think I lost you.
uh, Heath, I don't know if you're still there. You dropped out, but
Yeah.
there. You are.
Okay. Sorry, I heard it's not reasonable for RV help.
Yeah, it's not reasonable to expect RV help to be perfect. Is like right now is what I'm saying. So if you know, but also like, and I've joked about this before. Heath, you and I have been texting late at night trying to sort stuff out and get feedback. Like you're like, "Hey Mike, I don't understand why everybody's mad." It's like 1 in the morning, right? Like we've had that happen. I don't know what time it is there, but it was like late here.
Yeah.
and like we're trying to sort it out. And like I think that y'all are. The criticism I got was that I'm too friendly to RV help, but like I perceive that y'all are genuinely trying to listen to what everybody's doing. And my advice is it's not going to be perfect for everybody. But I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Dennis
Mhm.
before we wrap up is what is your pie in the sky gene, like if you could snap your fingers and make the system perfect,
Mm.
what is Heath's vision of RV help at full tilt at its greatest extent?
And to me, it's a place where if you have a problem in your RV and you need help, you can go there and find trusted people nearby who can help you quickly. And that's all RV service providers, everything from inspections to solar to tech work. And so to me, that's the direction. I need help. I need to find something quickly. And also, building community along the way with that. Like one of the things that it's a far-flung concept, but it was like 60 years ago, there was a club that started for RVers, like when people were just hitting the road, and you would put this sticker on the back of your window. And if you saw someone with that sticker and you were driving in your RV across the country, you would stop and help them if they had an issue. And to me, like part of that, and that was Good Sam Club. They've come a long way from that and diverted away directions. But I think the core concept of that is actually really cool, which is that living on the road is awesome, traveling in an RV is awesome, but having your RV break and not being able to get into anywhere to take it is frustrating, um, to say the absolute least. And so to me, that's the goal is like have a great trip, enjoy RV life more because you can find great people nearby to take care of you.
I would say that I share that vision. I think that would be great. And this is again, I don't know why the consumer would have a counter argument to that. I don't know. I literally have laid around like trying to envision what the counter argument really is. I'm like, I don't really see it. That sounds
Mm.
pretty good, right? People see the stick. It's like people make the comparison, Lyft or Uber, right? But every single person knows that if they pull out their phone, they're going to get a driver to come take them away. That's the minimum entry
Mhm.
level. And what you're saying is if like we can do that and have this friendly, positive community where people see it and they react positively, it's going to be huge. It's going to change. We talked about it once before. It's a disruption. It's going to change the industry for the better. So RV inspection is like this little disruption, and RV help is this could be this great big disruption that changes the way things operate for the better. And I'm all here for it, man. I love it. You're not gonna. The people that accuse me of being too friendly can go away because I'm a big fan of what y'all are doing. I think it's great, and I really like. Let me think of how I want to phrase this before I get in trouble. I really like when people have a lot of energy and they come into this space and we share some ideas that isn't this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way we should always do it.
Mm.
And I don't get that from y'all at all because like if it's Monday, you guys are going to make a change, and if you're like, oh, that didn't work, let's change it on Thursday. And I personally am so grateful for that. And we've touched on it a little bit. Like you guys catch a lot of anger over it, and I think it's valid. I think we should listen to all those things, but I also don't want you guys to get lost in. Don't get discouraged, man. You guys, there's a lot going on, and I encourage you to keep going.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Yeah, and over time, I hope that people see that ultimately, like what we're building is like the intent is to be useful, and to be useful for our viewers, and also to help all the tax and inspectors who are on the platform grow their business, and nothing happens overnight, but yeah, it definitely won't we won't get discouraged on our end. Like we'll just keep pushing forward, like for me there's been so many people who have like while there's definitely been loudness in our Facebook group, which we welcome and opened up for people. There's been just as many, if not way more, that have reached out individually and said like, great job, keep going, I got business. And so to me that's the fuel, that's the motivation. And so um, I'm big on focusing on like the people that we're helping, and to keep pushing forward there and not like listen to the constructive feedback, but also not get so lost in it that we're going to lose focus on what we're trying to build.
Right. And eventually y'all are going to make a decision that I don't like, and we'll hear about it, I'm
Sure.
sure. But it's I've been wrong before, right? Inspector Joe Schmo can be wrong before. You've been wrong before. This is this is a conversation. I have no experience building an online marketplace. I've never done it. I have no idea what the consumer actually wants when you get into an online marketplace. You do. And so when I see conversations, hey, we should harvest email or we shouldn't, I'm like, I don't really know. I want to give these guys a chance
That was an
to do
interesting
what.
one. Yeah, yeah, that was a whole topic. I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole if we wanted to, but
Yeah. But like, it's like, I don't really know what the
yeah,
consumer wants because, like, as you were describing it, I said, well, I harvest an email address and a phone number from
yeah.
every single person who contacts us. So I was like, and then in my mind's eye, I was, well, if RV Help is harvesting that information, then I get that information. If I get that information, then I can use it to market to them. I can send them emails with videos and sample reports and all this other stuff. So to me, it seemed reasonable. And then on the flip side of that, I was like, well, if they don't and they just Google Cozy Camper after they find me on RV Help, I get the lead anyway. So,
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't make any difference. But I think that's one where it looked like y'all. I was trying to wrap it up, and then I thought of another question. Uh, I saw y'all. You changed direction and you ungated the thing, but then you created like a sign up. I think it says join the resistance, which I really like.
Just a
And
generic email sign up. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then but then I think if you want, because I got a lead last night, and there's all this tracking information I can update where they're at. I have to give Elizabeth access so she can do that. It seems like you're harvesting the same information, you're just putting it in a different place.
Well,
So is that the intent?
the intent was always or is always to have something measurable that the biggest thing that we can do for RVers is like give response time, because that was one of the biggest complaints when we talked to RVers last summer is like I can't get people on the phone. And like one of the things that happened to us, Dennis may have talked about this, but we've had people that have reached out. If we don't have coverage in an area, RVers will just email us and just say, hey, this is broken. Can you help me find somebody? And Elizabeth on our team will just call through verified providers on RV Help. She had to call 10 to get this one older woman help. 7 voicemails she left. I don't think anyone called her back. Maybe one person like a week later. And so that's not a good experience for RVers, for anybody. And so the idea will be that over time, responsiveness on the platform is going to be a really big indicator in how much you're boosted. And so in order to do that, we need to know how you're engaging or responding on the platform. So that's really the idea of it. Just like Outdoorsy, just like Airbnb, any other marketplace component, we have messaging built in. We haven't released it yet because we want to be thoughtful about the fact that most providers are out and not behind a laptop. So when we do that, it has have some kind of text integration. Not everyone has phones, so these are a lot of things you have to think about. But yeah, that was the core idea. Is like we need to eventually lift up the providers who are actually being responsive when people reach out to them.
Well, and I'm so glad that you said that because Cozy Camper started as a rental business, and we had all of our RVs listed on Outdoorsy, and that was a metric how fast you responded
Hmm.
to people's messages, and which Elizabeth and I, it was a part-time job for us at that time, but we both had access to the phone, and our agreement was, and we actually had a business partner at that time too, and our agreement was, let's answer it as fast as we possibly can every time because there's so much you can't control,
Hmm.
but if you can typically control that, and so that's a metric that's easy, right? So I literally got the text and I knew exactly where you were going to go with it. And I was like, I don't know if they're tracking it yet, but I know this is what's going to happen. It's Sunday, but I'm going to literally get up right now and I'm going to answer this, right? And so like we immediately said, accept, sent this guy an email. We said, we'll call on Monday when we're back in the office. And then Elizabeth is that's who she was talking about at the beginning of this call. But that's huge. It's going to be difficult because people are going to have to adapt because like you said, right? Well, yeah, we do want to track responsiveness, but what is responsiveness? Is it clicking the link? Is it actually talking to someone on the phone? Does it count overnight? Does it count on the weekend if it's a holiday? It's going to be tough, but that's a way too where if a new practitioner this is what I thought
Hmm.
immediately. If a new practitioner comes into the scene and wants to really take off. That's something they can control,
Yep.
is how fast they react to leads and jump after it. And then yeah, maybe they go from someone that doesn't have any reviews at all to 10 just because they're faster on the phone than other people are. So that's really good. I was trying to wrap it up though, man, because we were 20 minutes late and we're 10 minutes into the next hour. But Heath, man, I'm so grateful that you came on the show. I was a little harder on you than I was on Dennis.
I thought you took it
Um,
easy. I could have taken more.
that you know what? That's it. You know, I thought about. You're gonna laugh. So when you do criminal investigations, a really common tactic
Uh-huh.
is you'll bring up something like if I was investigating in a crime, and this is going to be a specific complaint I saw on Facebook,
Hmm.
I would say, "Hey Heath, thanks so much for being on my podcast. You know, this may surprise you, but we actually talk about all manner of activity on this podcast. We talk about RV life. We talk about people who are engaging in massive criminal conspiracies to defraud the public and create antitrusts, and then we talk about RV repair. With that in mind, is there anything that you want to talk to me about?" And you know, and so I thought about doing that, but you'd be surprised at how many people will just confess after you hit him with that question. For the listener, that was something. I saw that comment and I texted Heath and I was like, Heath, man. It's like, do you actually make any money? And you're like, yeah, we're the first ever antitrust that makes basically $0 right now. It's never occurred. Um, that was that was funny to me though, man. When I read that, I don't believe that y'all are engaging in a massive criminal conspiracy. It seems like you have the public's best interest in mind.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, I don't think my wife would allow me to spend my time running a business otherwise.
I having met you a few times, I don't really get Tony Soprano or the Godfather vibes out of you. So I was like, seems like they're and you talk to Josiah, who when you, for the listener who doesn't know, Josiah is he's your tech guy, right? He's behind the scenes. I've asked him questions like, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And then he pulls out his computer like he's the dude from the Matrix. You see the green code like flowing down on the wall, and he's like, "Well, actually, there's a 1% difference between this and that thing over there." And you're like, "Sweet dude."
I mean,
Like,
honestly, like
still don't get the criminal
that
vibe out of
Josiah is incredible. So he's built a really like the product's come a long way in 3 months. Like the fun, like he pushed the mobile app to the store, so the mobile app's going to be out for RV help, so anybody's going to be able to find it on that. But like the things that he's been building is really cool. Like we actually have, we're tracking leads for like across the board in like hot markets, so we're going to be able to start sharing like what are the underserved markets or like what are the overserved markets based off the number of providers in that area based off of demand. um and honestly, just like talking about increasing the size and scope of like the opportunity here, there's a lot of I'm going a little bit of left field. There's a lot of like work that could be coming to mobile technicians or inspectors that isn't today, like on the tech side, like working with manufacturers to actually take like start collaborating more in the warranty process. Like there's some newer OEMs that are doing a really great job, like Brinkley and Alliance, of engaging with mobile repair, but there's a lot of really big established ones who are not. And so like we're going to start turning on some taps here pretty soon that I think haven't really been available, um, which I'm excited about. And I think they're going to be meaningful for helping people grow their business. So
Well, and that's huge because I only have data, and we talked about this. I only have data for me. I only know I don't have data. I don't know what the RV market is like in Amarillo because I don't work in
yeah,
Amarillo.
I can tell you,
Right? I
you're
don't
probably
know what.
better off in Austin than you are in Illinois right now.
Yeah, I'm sure that you're correct. But there's far fewer inspectors in that area,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So so it's like it's that's the kind of thing, and like we kind of know that, but there's so much. Nobody has been harvesting data at scale on our team really ever before, right? So maybe Brinkley does because they're a big corporation, but no, it's been this patchwork of individual practitioners who only know what goes on in their 50-mile service radius. And so when again to connect to law enforcement, we would have fusion centers, right? Where if some agency in Denver, Colorado noticed a trend, they could upload it, and then an agency in Austin, Texas can be aware of it, right? Like,
Hmm.
hey, we're seeing this kind of bank fraud. It didn't actually occur to anyone in Austin, but we would know about it because Denver encountered it. Happened all the time. And it was useful intelligence. And so when I look at this, I'm like, well, RV help, yeah, it's going to get me leads, but I can tell based on what we just described that y'all are gathering intelligence about different markets and what's going on in other places. And something that might have happened is, Florida is a, I'm just speculating. Florida is a very dense RV inspector and technician market.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people there, and I'm sure there's a lot of inspectors there. But with the advent of data, it's like, hey, well, maybe Southern Nevada is underserved because there's no inspectors out there. Well, maybe if you're brand new, you want to keep that in mind, right? And you want to go out to Southern Nevada and build a business there before moving somewhere else, right? Or maybe parts of Florida are busier and more underserved than others. Times of year make a difference.
Yeah.
The climate makes a difference. So all that stuff can be unpacked in a way that couldn't before.
Sure.
I'm
I
in,
think a
man.
lot of
You
people when
sold me.
they hear about like harvesting data or even like email signups, I'm in my mind, I'm like, well, the goal of an email sign up is likely to just turn around, or not likely, it is to just turn around and be like, hey, who can we promote in different markets? So it'll or like harvesting data about like where people are. It sounds like but the idea is like, how can we create some nice PDFs and share them with service providers and say, hey, you should go here because there's more jobs than people. It's just,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That was, I mean, every last year, we've, our social media has doubled in about the last year. And we went from a year ago really not having very many leads from social media at all to being like very competitive in that space. And like we said, and people, I don't want anyone to watch this and be like, Mike said Illinois and Wisconsin are busy, so we should all go. That's not what I said. What I'm saying is that we put up our flag there, and then we were instantly putting people away.
Mm.
We couldn't stop working because there's only like two other inspectors in the region that are really active, and just being able to like spread that, like, hey, here's this heat map, right? It's quarter 1, whatever year, that will go a long way to people making travel plans. I went to Arizona last summer, and which is miserable, but all the inspectors left. And so there was a huge demand in Arizona last summer
Mm.
to do inspections. So I went out there for someone. Somebody hired me to go to Arizona. And I said, I'm here. I'll put my pin out and see what happens. And I was slammed. Like I couldn't leave. And so if I, like after my fourth inspection in 110-degree weather, I said that's enough. I'm coming home. But that kind of thing I think could be helpful. So I think it's all good, man. We should, we should probably wrap it up. But Heath, man, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you working through all the technical troubles we had at the beginning.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Later, man.
All right. Later, Mike.